It's going Jane Unchained Talk Live. We're very honored to have Dr. Garth Davis. He is a nationally recognized medical doctor who is the medical director of weight management at Mission Hospital in Asheville. And he is also the author of the incredible book, Proteinaholic, which talks about how our obsession with meat is killing us and what we can do about it. Now, Dr. Davis, one of the reasons I was so interested in talking with you today is because of this new headline. This is the New York Times: obesity linked to severe coronavirus disease, especially in younger patients. Young adults with obesity are more likely to be hospitalized, even if they have no other health problems, studies show. This is the new headline breaking right now, that obesity is linked to the severe coronavirus cases. As somebody who is the medical director of weight management at Mission Hospital, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the data is pretty compelling. Of course, a lot of these articles that are coming out are not yet peer reviewed. We haven't gone through them in detail. So a lot of it's kind of preliminary, but we're seeing it all around the world. Even in Wuhan, China, where there's not a lot of obesity, they were noticing that you were more likely to get sick if you were obese, and actually more likely to die if you were obese. In America, it's looking like for people under 60, there's double the chance of getting admitted and being put in the hospital if you get the virus. You could ask the question, why is that? It's hard to know. Is it the obesity, or is it what's making you obese to begin with, right? I mean, that's a central question we have to ask ourselves. So people that are overweight aren't eating healthy, right? They're not getting out and they're not exercising, so they probably have low vitamin D levels too. So is it just the obesity? Is it because obesity itself is causing a problem? We know that when you get to a point where you're obese, you get fat in your muscle cells, which develops insulin resistance. We know that people that are obese have a baseline higher inflammatory scores. But again, that can be partly because they're not eating a healthy diet. They're not getting antioxidants. They're not getting vitamin C, vitamin D. And so they may be predisposed to infection because of what they're eating. It may be because of the actual fat secreting. We know that we used to think fat was kind of just an inert substance, but actually secretes inflammatory mediators. And so, we're in the situation, is it the obesity? Is it what's causing the obesity? Is it both? And probably is a little bit of both.
Well, what is causing the obesity? Again, we reached out to you because of this breaking news. This is the New York Times headline today: obesity linked to severe coronavirus disease, especially in younger patients. Young adults with obesity are more likely to be hospitalized, even if they have no other health problems, according to studies. And you are the medical director of weight management at Mission Hospital in Asheville. So obviously this is your area of expertise. But additionally, you're the author of Proteinaholic, which is an amazing book that really shows how our obsession with meat, which has been basically synonymous with protein, even though there's more protein calorie per calorie in kale than in steak, is killing us. Is there a connection between diet and having a greater propensity to suffer the worst effects of coronavirus?
Yeah, we haven't done the diet study yet, so we don't know this, what are these people eating that are dying? But I mean, common sense will tell you that someone that's morbidly obese is not eating a healthy diet right now. As to your question about what causes obesity, well, obesity, is multifactorial. There's many things that are causing it. There's definitely a genetic predisposition to obesity. So if you look at twin studies, they did these great studies of twins separated at birth, growing up in separate environments. Obesity is definitely very, very genetically related. In fact, it is one of our most inherited traits that we get. But it can't just be genes, because obesity is increasing like crazy over the past 20 years, 30 years really. And, our genes aren't changing over those 30 years. So it's kind of genes in the wrong environment. And the wrong environment is, first of all, a diet that that emphasizes way too much protein. Of course, like you mentioned, people think of meat synonymous with the word protein, so they're eating more meat, which is very calorie dense. They're also eating a lot of highly processed, ultra processed is what we call them, foods that are, high calorie density. And people are not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. So if you look at our total calorie increase over the past 40 years, it just keeps going up and up and up. But our increase in the vital fruits and vegetables that give us the nutrients and the protection we need, that's not going up at all.
Well, yes, and I'm just looking at some articles here. It says nearly 40% of American adults under the age of 60 have a BMI of 30 or higher, which makes obesity a significant risk factor for COVID-19 hospitalizations. So are we saying that 40% of Americans are obese?
40% of Americans are obese. Look, 66% of Americans are overweight with a BMI above 25. So it's much more normal to be overweight now than it is to be obese. And the funny thing is, when I work with patients and I help them lose weight, almost invariably they tell me that their family is like, "Oh, you look too skinny now," because we've become comfortable with overweight, and low grade obesity is kind of the normal. And so that's kind of like the normal look. And we see someone skinny, we're like, "Oh, that person's unhealthy. They're too skinny." This isn't about, how you look. It's really about how healthy you are. And we know that people that are overweight and obese tend to have insulin resistance and tend to start getting metabolic diseases with high cholesterol, heart disease, which is our number one killer. Um, and and so this extra weight we have is not just a body image issue, it really is a health issue.
Absolutely. Now, during this time of crisis where people are at home in isolation, basically, this is an opportunity for reevaluation. So, doctor, given that 40% of Americans are obese and that you said two-thirds, I guess, are overweight and or obese, is this an opportunity for everybody to reflect on their diet, and what recommendations would you give as the medical director of a weight management program at a major hospital in Asheville?
Yeah, funny enough, I just wrote a blog about this, and I've been doing telehealth and meeting with my patients and talking with them, because this is actually a excellent opportunity. In our society, we live in such a rut. We get so used to our day-to-day activity. Wake up, cup of coffee, drive by for a sausage, egg, and biscuit, go to work, come home, sit in front of the TV. It's like the set pattern that everybody has. And so I could tell people how to live a healthy lifestyle. But first things first is we have to develop new rituals. And it's really hard. Like, for instance, I decided during this little COVID-19 that I've got so much more time. I'm going to do some stuff with it. I'm really going to try to get my schedule down, because our bodies work very well with circadian rhythms. So I want to start going to bed at the exact same time. I also wanted to start meditating. So I set up what are called SMART goals. So for SMART goals, what you want is you want a specific goal that's measurable. So my measurable goal was to meditate for 20 minutes twice a day, but then I'm going to go start with 5 minutes and go up to 10 minutes, go up to 15 minutes. I'm not setting unrealistic goals. They're achievable. I could get to 20 minutes twice a day. Before, it was hard for me to do that because I would sit down and meditate and think, "Oh my God, I got to go to work right now. I've got this to do. I've got that to do." But now I've got this opportunity to start doing it over and over again. And the more I do it, the more it becomes a habit, the more it becomes a ritual. So what I've been doing with my patients is discussing rituals. And when it comes to obesity, one thing I like to do is get people to do a few things that we know are evidence-based for losing weight. One of them is to practice time-restricted eating. And what I mean by time restricted eating, it's almost like intermittent fasting. But what I like my patients to do is eat at the exact same time every day. People are way too predisposed to do what's called grazing, which is say, "Oh, look, there's a little food here, there's a little food there. Let me grab a little bite
I know
here."
it
And
well.
if you, yeah, and the problem is when you ask someone, what did you eat yesterday? They only remember their meals. They forget the handful of nuts here and a handful of M&Ms there. And so I really like to establish a very set pattern of eating. I also like them to eat over a 10-hour window with a 14-hour fast every night. And so I've been working with my patients right now on trying to establish that kind of pattern, because right now our patterns are all thrown off. And if you really let your patterns get thrown off, you'll be in trouble. So I really try to get them to get into a pattern, to not eat at night, and to really get set with this patterned eating. Of course, I'm very big, as you know, on fruits and vegetables. And so we've been talking about how you can eat a healthy diet in quarantine, what a healthy meal looks like, which is very loaded with fiber. I talk a lot about beans and carbohydrates. I like people to have a moderate breakfast, a big lunch, a light snack, and a light dinner. So try to stack the calories a little bit earlier. And then I talk about, for satiety purposes, there's been a lot of studies showing that beans are really good at keeping you full later. So beans and starches at lunch, really important for controlling hunger later on so you don't get the munchies at 9 o'clock. And then the other thing is I really want people getting 10,000 steps a day. We work a lot with our patients on using pedometers and step monitors because it's not good enough to just do a 30-minute workout and then sit all day long. So I've really been encouraging my patients to go out for walks, to do whatever movement they can to incorporate some exercise, but really at the end of the day, make sure they're getting that 8 to 10,000 steps daily.
Wow, incredible advice. Now, in terms of people, the other impetus would be that it seems that we're talking to Dr. Davis, medical director of weight management at Mission Hospital today, specifically about this new report in the New York Times, obesity linked to severe coronavirus disease. But there have been a lot of previous reports that heart disease, cancer, diabetes, as well as obesity are markers of suffering more severe consequences of COVID-19. And so as we look at the overall picture for our own survival, what kind of diet would you recommend specifically starting now? If you could give a sample breakfast, lunch, and dinner of maybe what you eat or you advise people to eat in your incredible book, Proteinaholic.
So there's a 2-week plan in that book, but in general, what I have patients do is, so their first meal, they've got 10 hours to eat all the other meals after that, right? So time restricted eating. So typically people eat breakfast between 8 and 10. I tell them if you're not hungry in the morning, just start at 10 o'clock. Love oatmeal for breakfast. So this morning I had oatmeals and berries with some chopped walnuts, a little cinnamon, and that is a perfect breakfast. We could go into why that is, but it's a slow releasing carbohydrate and keeps you full longer. I really like at lunch for people to get some dark green vegetables, to really make a fancy salad. People are so and not creative when they come to salad making. I mean, your salad should be colorful, like a rainbow. I really like a potato at lunch or some rice and beans, so that we get that starch and legume to really help with satiety later. Snack, I usually do apples and a walnut or some kind of whole fruit and walnuts. And then dinner, I do a veggie stir fry or a whole grain pasta with lots of vegetables in it. And then that's like a typical day eating. It's fairly simple. It's not expensive. It's very easy to make. And I have seen such amazing results with it in my patients.
Wow. So as we get through this coronavirus crisis, I know you're very busy. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. What would you say in terms of the book Proteinaholic? What does that mean, Proteinaholic, and why that focus?
Yeah, my focus was because I've been working with people to help them lose weight for almost 20 years now. Time flies. And I noticed at one point that no matter what I told people, they just kept focusing on protein. They would be like, I'd say, hey, I want you to eat an apple for a snack. And they bring in their journal. I have my patient's journal. And their snack is beef jerky. I'm like, why the beef jerky? Well, it's got protein. Is that why you didn't eat the apple? Yeah, apple doesn't have any protein. And I can't, they're so fixated because, companies have been selling us protein for so much that they think they have to get these huge amounts of protein. And if you look around the world, the healthiest cultures in the world actually eat a fairly low protein diet. If you look at a percentage from calories, the blue zones that we typically refer to get about 10 to 12% of their calories traditionally from protein, and most of that's plant protein, whereas Americans, eat somewhere between 50 and 20% of our calories from protein, and we're always trying to get more, such that we'll actually eat, a completely processed protein bar and think we're being healthy rather than eating an apple. We think it's a better choice. And so Proteinaholic was basically created so that I can review all the literature that shows that eating a high protein diet is not necessarily good for you. In fact, in some studies, anytime anybody loses weight, doesn't matter how you lose weight, it's going to have an effect on metabolic disease. So you could be overweight and you could go on a ketosis diet and you could lose weight and you're going to be healthier. But they did a study where they compared people that they gave them two groups of people. They gave them both a much lower calorie diet. Both groups lost weight. You would expect that both groups would have the same response to their insulin resistance. However, one group was a high protein weight loser and the other group was a low protein weight loser. And the low protein group did much better as far as insulin resistance as the high protein group did. And in fact, in a lot of these keto diets that people do, while they do control their diabetes and their blood sugar drops down, if you give the glucose tolerance test, they fail it because they are not becoming insulin sensitive. And when you look at the problems with the COVID disease, part of it may be insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. And the fact that you could still be insulin resistant may play a part in of course, we don't have the whole facts of this, but it may play a part in your susceptibility to a more severe disease.
So if you had to wrap it up as we wrap it up, what advice would you give to people watching about their diet, Dr. Garth?
Look, I mean, there's a few things we know. There's certain things in life that you got to have. Getting too much of stuff isn't good either, but you need to have enough vitamin D. Most people, I can't believe every time I check people's labs, their vitamin D is low, which means you've got to get out in the sun. We know that exercise is a really good at preventing you getting too much inflammatory response and cytokine storms. So you get exercise in the sun, you get the vitamin D and the exercise. We know from a diet high in leafy greens, high in fruits and vegetables is loaded with antioxidants. You'll get plenty of vitamin C, which is really good. But taking high dose vitamin C, unless you're acutely sick, probably won't do any good. We know that getting fiber in your diet is absolutely essential for maintaining a healthy microbiome, and we're learning more and more that a healthy microbiome is basically healthy life in the future. So basically a plant-based diet with a whole bunch of varieties of fruits, vegetables, beans, a few nuts and seeds, getting outside and getting moving, and you should be in pretty good shape for the future.
I want to thank you for taking the time. It's been so great. Everybody check out Dr. Garth Davis's book, Proteinaholic. You can order it online, obviously. And thank you for really giving us some really good tips to use this time in quarantine and in isolation as an opportunity for transformation. Thank you, Garth Davis.
Sure. Thank you, Jane. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.